So artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, Gen AI. So a lot of people, use these words. Sometimes, they get confused what exactly this means. So in this video, I'll be giving a clear explanation with a simple example, a healthcare organization example, and a realistic example on what actually AI, ML, DL, Gen AI, so that you can start applying appropriately. I'm Suresh from TheMindRise.AI, a tech firm. Let's get into the video. So, artificial intelligence, this is the broader, the term, the broadest term, wherein it actually works based on rules, it based on some algorithms, could be some, for example, autonomous car, right? So sensors, everything beyond ML, DL, Gen AI. So this is the broadest term, a broader area, wherein all other stuff, comes under this umbrella, right? For example, based on last visit, based on last 10 visits to patient to a hospital, right? So it learns the pattern and it will give your next suggestion, like what could be the doctor that you can, who is the best doctor that you can visit, etc. Or, if you are died, etc. So that is kind of thing, you can actually do. So there are some techniques in AI which actually use before that, right? So you understand this as a broader area, and there are some rules that you can define, like rule one, two, three, four, five, and 10, right? So machine will just go through these rules to execute the respective task. And like recognition, sometimes we see our face gets recognized by a phone and to unlock, right? So similarly, a medical image can be recognized automatically, and if you can actually predict what could be the next set of patients that may fall, high risk for diabetes next year, or suppose if you're working for a hospital and the insurer, right? What is the probability that the policy may actually get approved, etc. So many things, you can automate the operations department, right? Optimization techniques, etc. So this AI is the broadest term, and under this AI, there are so many things, either rule or some mathematical models or some automated stuff exist to solve the problems. When it comes to the machine learning, so this is where actually the main, I think I could say like 70 to 80% of problem statements get solved, right? So whenever you have structured data, so when I say structured data, the tables, it's rows and columns where machine can read the rows and columns, and there are some labels, so labeled data. And if you in this example, if you want to, let's say there is a patient record or doctor's data, etc. What we want to predict yesterday, I'm sorry, the previous slide we discussed, probability that the risk for a disease is high, right? A risk for disease is low, etc. Based on the past data, that you will be building an equation so that machine can learn and help you to predict for next patient or next 1 year, like what is the probability that the diabetic risk is high, etc. Right? So this is very important. Machine learning is a subset of AI, wherein machine will understand the patterns, the relationship between your x and y, and to build an equation so that you use this equation to predict the next set of data, right? And also this is important, it works really good for structured or tabular data, right? So this is machine learning. Comes to deep learning, right? So beyond the structured data, so previous slide we have seen tables. So the data which is actually the tables. Now suppose if it is not a table or structured data, let's say if it is an image, right? The X-ray image, and some like suppose there are 1 million patients, and the like, so one patient visit like 10 times, one patient visit like one time. So now how to actually identify the patterns. And suppose if you want to forecast something based on millions of instances or activities on that particular day. So whenever machine learning fails to build the relationship, then deep learning comes predominantly when there is unstructured data. All right. So you can say this is a text, this could be image, or this could be audio, right? So this audio get translated to text, and text is again to NLP or different algorithms like deep learning for image, especially X-ray detection. Suppose these days, right, what is the technology? You just send your MRI scan based on already pre-trained samples. It will classify whether this particular image has any sort of risk for a disease, etc. Right? So why deep is again? So you bring more and more layers for machine to understand more complex patterns. Simple. Okay, so that is the key difference, machine learning and deep learning. Machine learning, wherein machine able to get the pattern based on whatever structured data, wherein deep learning, the traditional machine learning algorithm fails. So that's why we introduce this concept, neural networks. So you introduce different neurons, different layers to connect each other to bring your equation y equal to plus bx. Right? So that's about deep learning. Then generative AI, I think even class one student also using these days ChatGPT. ChatGPT is one of the best example, right? And many models, right? Claude AI, so many models. So what exactly these they're actually doing? So they rely on this concept called large language models, right? So this is not just an analyzing or a prediction or a classification, etc. It actually creates the text, could be text or image or audio, anything. PPTs or so many things, Gamma.ai is for PPT. So all these, there are 100 plus, AI tools exist based on this generative AI concept. They create the content. So brand new, again, based on the prompt, whatever prompt you give. So they create the content. This content, how it works basically, right? For example, if I come back to the hospital example that we've been discussing, ML, DL, etc. So you have so many notes from doctor, right? So usually they takes doctors for a patient who is in, let's say, in inpatient, and what is the diagnosis, observation, medication changes, etc., etc. So 30, 40 pages exist. Suppose if you want to go through all these pages and get a summary in 10 lines so that quickly you can refer. Suppose if a patient is visiting after 6 months. Earlier, he was in the hospital for 2 months and he went through a lot of surgeries, observations, I mean, diagnoses, etc., etc. Right? So then this gives a summary so that in a minute's time, doctor can easily recall his history and his treatment, what actually treatment went. You remember in olden days, like doctor used to spend at least 30 minutes to go through all the reports, all the prescriptions, etc., etc. But now in Gen A, just 1 minute, less than 1 minute, it creates the discharge summary so that anyone can easily read and understand what happens. Similarly, you can take this concept, in any industry, banking or telecom or anything, it actually works, right? So that is about generative AI. Now, in just to summarize everything here, right? So broader umbrella is the artificial intelligence and machine learning, deep learning, and Gen AI are the subsets of. We do also have agentic AI. I'll be talking about more on this in upcoming videos. You learn more on that. So it takes anything, right? It is primarily rule or some sort of learning. So to get some decision, to give some decision or action, basically, right? Suppose if there is email example, email spam or not spam. This is a simple example. So you put a rule saying that okay, in my email, if there is a word, there is a second word, there is a third word. If it has all these three, four words, then classify this as a spam. So it's a simple classification. It's a simple rule-based classification, right? So that is AI. And then machine learning, we have so many algorithms like linear regression, logistic regression. So it actually learns from the labeled data and that to structure, it gives prediction. So you can easily predict. So next, what is the probability that this patient may get into diabetic risk, etc., or heart attack risk, cardiac risk, etc. The deep learning is one step ahead, like not a structured data. This is more unstructured data, text, images, etc. And it actually learns through this concept called neural network. So the people easily detect these days. Early stage detection, I could say. Earlier, X-ray, and they have to wait for 14 days to take another X-ray and see the difference and all. But now, given the deep learning applications, instantly you can see there is a risk for a particular disease or not, right? On top of all these things today, this is a separate world, Gen AI. It's a subset of this one because it used concept of large language models. So it is trained on massive data sets. So whatever you search in Google, you get, right. So all the data sets gets trained and you get the content based on your prompt. Okay. So in this healthcare organization, or I could say HCO or hospital, we call it as HCO. So we discussed a few examples, right? So some rule based to understand which patient is near to the appointment and send a trigger kind of rules, traditional AI rules. If you want to predict something, which doctor may have more patients or which patient may have more risk towards a disease. So these sort of prediction, when there is uncertainty exists, machine learning will help. Deep learning beyond the structured data, use unstructured data and generative AI to generate the content based on your data or something related to hospital or doctors or patients also you can generate using your prompt, right? Please make sure that you use these words appropriately, so never get confused. If you want to get in more deeper, so try to bring the examples from the industry that you're working on it. Let's say banking, let's say telecom. So what is banking? In banking, there is like a risk associated, right? So what is the probability if I issue a loan or credit card that this guy will repay? So that is machine learning. So deep learning, you can actually say that. So what is the sentiment from the conversations happened between the customer and customer's executive, right? So these sort of things you can think and make sure that you use these terms appropriately. Okay, so that's about the basic AI, ML, deep learning journey. In upcoming videos, we will be learning more deep content in AI and agentic AI. Please stay tuned. And this is important, as I just mentioned, for everyone, whether you are a student or career switcher or business leader. So make sure that you use appropriately. You understand the problem statement in depth and bring the respective data and then bring the respective methodology. That's where why, I would say 92% of AI products are getting failed. The reason that the appropriate mapping between the problem and the solution. Okay, so I hope you got the base and you appropriately leverage these techniques and use them for better value of your business. Right? Good. And quickly before I close, this is MindRise.AI. So please subscribe and you get more content on agentic AI, Gen AI, and AI related stuff. Okay. Also, we have a career intelligence platform, the So please visit and do assess yourself if you are actually planning to switch your career or if you want to assess yourself if you fit that particular role, could be data scientist, cybersecurity, or anything. So this helps a lot. I mean, this is completely different. It's the insights you can go to sample report, understand what sort of insights it gives. Thank you so much.